During his now infamous trial, January 6 defendant Jacob Chansley, aka the Q Shaman, faced some very hefty sentences. These included a 5-year prison sentence and a fine of up to $250,000. In law, such fines are levied as a form of restitution in order to compensate for costs such as damaged property, medical bills resulting from personal injury, or even to pay an opponent's legal fees. The concept of reparations is that it is a form of punishment that can also help to repair the damage that was done by the accused. It's important to note, the government cannot fine you with reparations out of the blue. You have to be guilty of a crime. It's good that Chansley wasn't ultimately hit with the full amount, as $250,000 for most people can't be raised easily. People work their entire lives and still can't save that much money. It's such a large amount that even someone as gullible as Judge Lamberth, a man who genuinely believed the Q Shaman was somehow the breath from destroying America's democracy forever, thought the penalty was overkill. Lately, there's been another shaman in the news, only this shaman has two ends. Shaman Walton is a member of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, a body which voted unanimously last Wednesday to approve a plan to give $5 million to every eligible Black resident as part of the city's plan to make reparations for slavery. The plan was a way to go before final approval. Like every other member of the board, Shaman Walton wants to see it through. He says, quote, "We have to stay focused and stay together as a community," he says. Because now it is 100% more prevalent that we cannot be separated or divided. Let's stay the course. Because a $5 million payday for me is almost here. It might be pertinent to point out that Shaman Walton himself is Black. And something also tells me he will be included among those deemed eligible for the payout. So you can see why his most pressing concern at this point is to encourage everyone to keep their eyes on the prize. His prize, specifically. He told his fellow supervisors, quote, "Let's not lose focus, because when we receive the final report, we have to actually resource the path forward." You see, he's already focused on the next hurdle to clear, actually finding the money it would take to fund this project. Currently, there are about 50,000 Black people living in the city. San Francisco happens to be one of the whitest suburban centers in the United States, with the Black resident population accounting for fewer than 6% of the overall population. The Stanford University Hoover Institution crunched the numbers and came up with what this plan would cost: $600,000 per non-Black family. And if you're keeping track, that's well over twice what Jacob Chansley faced in a federal criminal court. How would you like to be a San Franciscan family realizing you suddenly are on the hook for an amount of money in excess of the fines levied for insurrection? It's one thing to be fined in a court of law, quite another to be fined in absentia for a 100-year-old crime that you did not commit. It may not even be a crime your ancestors committed. And this gets to the fundamental law and the reasoning behind reparations. You can't penalize innocent people for someone else's crimes. And to argue that it's justified solely because of race does nothing to solve the problem of racism. It's actually guaranteed to make race relations worse because you're unjustly punishing innocent people based on skin color. The fact that the Board of Supervisors approved this plan also demonstrates the naked contempt they have for their constituents. Over $500,000 per family is an insane amount. It's pretty audacious to think everyone would be okay with paying out that much cash without a complaint. And complain they did. To any sane person, complaining would be a normal response. But according to one of AP's articles, several supervisors were shocked to hear pushback from residents. "Yes, how dare you speak out, you stupid tax cow. Don't you know that you're not supposed to have a say? Your sole purpose in life is to give money when we milk you for it. Get back to work so that you can earn enough to pay off your race debt. Is this where we are as a country now?" Because that kind of dismissive and exploitative attitude sounds a lot more like the words of a slave owner than anything anyone on the right is saying. I would like to remind the San Francisco Board of Supervisors that their residents are human people. Research shows that even dogs understand when they are being punished unfairly. How did you think your fellow residents were going to react? Proponents of this cartoonishly stupid reparations plan say it can fix the ills caused by slavery generations ago. The Associated Press faults opponents and ironically claims that even liberal San Franciscans are, quote, apparently unaware that the legacy of slavery and racist policies continue to keep Black Americans on the bottom rungs of health, education, and economic prosperity and overrepresented in prisons and homeless populations. What the Associated Press fails to realize is that at some point in history, most people were enslaved. The very English word comes from the word for the Slavic people who were enslaved by Vikings and North Africans. The Irish, too, were enslaved, as were the Chinese. One of the driving forces behind the Crusades was to rescue European Christians enslaved by Muslims. None of these people are asking for reparations, nor is anyone in America demanding reparations from African nations who started the African slave trade in the first place. Of course not. Those nations aren't as rich as San Francisco. Perhaps the weirdest thing about this reparations plan, the thing that reveals it for the lie that it is the fact that the proponents are completely blind to the injustice going on about them now. I'm not just talking about the fact that slavery is being practiced today, and the good people of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors could care less, although that's a fairly damning observation given how much weight they attribute to the topic. Proponents of reparations believe that future generations should be held responsible for the crimes of their ancestors because those ancestors did not do the right thing in the moment. Had our ancestors rejected the African practice of slave trading from the outset, surely there would be no case to punish the residents of San Francisco today, right? This would seem to indicate that the biggest imperative for us today is to stop all such acts of criminal exploitation and government-sponsored abuse. Today, otherwise our children, grandchildren, or great-grandchildren will be on the hook for our present lack of incentive. But is that what the San Francisco Board of Supervisors are concerned about? We live in a country where corporate lobbyists bribe lawmakers to leave our borders open so the rich and powerful can have cheap and exploitable labor. We live in a country where our government is roaming around looking for Christians to threaten in jail. We live in a country where a shadow government colludes with San Francisco's most lucrative corporations to censor the truth and muzzle Americans. We live in a country where innocent people were punished for not taking experimental drugs. We live in a country where mentally unstable parents are forcing their children to undergo irreversible procedures for little more than some social media cred. So what do you say, San Francisco Board of Supervisors? Are you going to live up to the very standard you impose on your residents? Will you or your children bear the many penalties for the evils which you allow to exist in the here and now? After all, it's about doing the right thing in the moment, right? We're punishing people now because people in the past didn't do the right thing, and here you are, not doing the right thing. Just like those people who turned a blind eye to slavery and injustice back in the day. So if you do end up getting that reparations payout, I'm going to advise you not to bother even drawing up a will. Don't waste any time trying to ensure that your children are able to benefit from your windfall, because that $5 million, it's already spoken for.